Question Everything was born out of a desire for curiosity, a love for people's stories, and a deep belief that through open and honest conversations, freedom can be found. Freedom from shame, from judgment, and from fear. So let's talk about the stuff we've been hiding from. Let's say the things we were told not to say. And let's ask the questions we've been wanting to ask, but have been too scared to. Because when we question everything, everything changes. Let's go. Welcome to Question Everything. Today I am on with my friend Suzy Dominic, and it's about the masks we wear. So it has been a while. It's probably been a little over a month since my last episode, and a lot's been going on. You may notice a little bit different of a background. We moved. I was at my dad's celebration of life, and it's been physically taxing, emotionally taxing, and just with everything that's going on in the world, right? It's been a lot, as I know it is for you. And I share that because even as somebody who does the work, who does accountability, who does goal setting, I can find myself getting a little off track. And it's totally normal that when we do that, we start to beat ourselves up, right? When that second week when I didn't do this, I was like, you're supposed to do it. She didn't. But in the meantime, I'm doing all this other stuff. And I finally just said, come back to this. This is a fun project. This is a passion project. This should not be work, right? But giving myself that grace and time. And now I'm back and I'm energized and I'm excited because I have some great episodes that I've taped, some that are coming up, and it's going to be just some juicy, fun conversation. So thank you for the grace. I hope you extend yourself the grace if you find yourself in this space. So today I talked with Suzy Dominic, and she's a phenomenal human being. And I met her at Powerhouse, which is an event hosted by Tracy Lipp, which, I've talked about in other episodes it was such a powerful event for me. And Suzy was just somebody, we didn't spend a ton of one-on-one time together, but I had two instances where she just loved on me so hard. Because as I mentioned, this was when I found out my dad passed away, and I was, with this group of amazing women who I did not know before I got there. And she was just so kind to me, and I loved her spirit and her energy. And so, we connected on Facebook. And then after Naomi Judd committed suicide, she posted something, and it talked about her near suicide attempt. And it was I loved that she spoke boldly about it. I loved that it came from somebody who you may not have ever maybe fought that depression. And so I wanted to come on and talk a little bit more about that. So, we don't get into the details of, what that looks like, but just so that, that is a conversation we will have, what that looked like for her. But I am just excited to share her story because, so often the people that look the strongest may be struggling on the inside, right? And I think it's so important that we talk about that you can be both a powerful, high-powered executive woman or whatever that looks like, and also be struggling on the inside. So thank you for tuning in. I hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I've been having. Hello, Suzy.
Hello, Holly. It's so good to see you.
So fun to see you. How has your week been?
It's been really good. I've been at a shore house, really enjoying the sun. So it's been nice.
It's that time. Well, good. Well, in our intro, I talked about how we met at Powerhouse and how I think I didn't mention, so I think you were my last really good hug before I left. So you were my last memory as I was jetting out, and you were such a wonderful person loving on me during that time. So thank you for that.
You're very welcome. Welcome. I was touched.
That's great. So, you had posted in Facebook, I've been almost a month now, about kind of mental health, right? I think it was when Winona Judd passed away, and and you were talking about your mental health journey, and I was so inspired because you said how people said snap out of it, and how that you had tried, and that this was something that you struggled with, in shame. You use shame a lot in that. So tell me, what was it like to post that post?
So I felt like I needed to post it. It was this moment where we had just learned that Naomi actually killed herself.
Oh, Naomi, yes.
Then we learned, I had read previously about two college athletes, I think they were both girls, who both took their lives. And I thought, we're not, this just isn't right. We've got to talk about this more. And everyone in my circle knows what I've struggled with, but that's a small circle. And I just decided, you know what, I need people to know about my struggles, because people look at me Like I was successful in my career. I retired at 56. That's not something a lot of people get to do. And so like I've got it together and no, like I've got my own issues. And I really felt like I needed to share that publicly. And I will say, I have family members who don't like how much I share publicly. And I, say thank you. And I continue to share publicly because I think it's important that people know all of me and that people recognize themselves in others. And at that moment, there's one person out there who might have read that post and said, wow, I had no idea. And look at her today. She's got her shit together. Like maybe I can learn something or maybe I'm not alone. And that's all I want for somebody is to just know them.
Oh, it's beautiful. Were there some nerves as you posted that?
I think the biggest nerves I had were what my brother might say, but he ended up not saying anything. He was like, that's your thing. So I think once I got over, like, he's probably not gonna be thrilled with me, but I did it anyway. And so the nerves are just, I think I've gotten to a point in my life where I don't have those same nerves that I would have had 10 years ago. I would have had trouble posting something like that. Today, I'm a lot more comfortable in my skin and who I am, and this is who I am, and I share.
Oh.
The family members that don't like it, they deal with that.
They don't like it. It's not your problem.
Right.
We sometimes make it our problem, but it's not ours.
Absolutely.
Well, tell me, was there, as you posted that, was there anything that was kind of surprising to you, the responses or anything that kind of really like touched your heart?
A couple of things, right? So people reaching out to me like you to just say thank you, to share their own stories with me privately, to tell me how they still didn't know that I went through that. People that were surprised, given my background was human resources, that I felt the way that I felt, that my company, that somebody in my company that I worked with used that against me and nobody seemed to care. And so I got a lot of those. I got a lot of support. I didn't get anything that was similar to the reaction I got in 2010 when I came back from a month out of work and shared with people what had gone on. Because there I got, as I wrote in that post, I got two different responses. I got the response of, thank you so much for sharing. Because of you, I've gone to a therapist, or because of you, I now realize like I can just get help. I don't need to, hide anymore. And then I got the people that said, how dare you talk about that publicly? Why would you bring that to work? I don't need to know that you're sad. I don't like, those were their words. I had one person write it in an evaluation of a workshop, where this came up, that I don't need to know that Suzy Dominic's been sad.
Okay. Ooh, I don't need to know Suzy's a human. I don't need to know the human stuff of her.
Right. She's an executive. We just put her up on stage, we prop her up and she gets to do her thing. And that's it. There's no real person in there. And that's the kind of stuff that created such shame for me. Like I knew if I had been recovering from cancer and I got on a stage and talked about it, nobody would have said anything.
Oh yeah, you'd be praised.
Yeah. We even had, we had an executive who got up and talked about domestic violence and she was praised. But mental health has a totally different connotation.
Oh, maybe let's start there too. Talking about being I love the power of and, right? Like we just talked about this in our pre-call, right? The power, like I can have the story and you can have this version. Like, what's it like? Tell me what it was like for you to be an executive woman in a leadership position and be battling this depression and this sadness. Like, what was that like for you?
So I battled it for a lot longer than I ever realized. And one of the things that I shared in 2010 was that I learned that I was probably clinically depressed for 25 years. I wore a mask, as many of us do, and I wore a big mask of I'm fine. I was raised to be a very strong, independent woman. I was. And so to ask for help, never. To admit I needed help, oh gosh, no. That would never happen. And at work, I always had the strong, brave face. I was kind of a jokester, which I still have my sense of humor. I was always self-deprecating. So my idea of self-deprecation was to I would throw things up about myself before anybody else would. And it lost its power. Right now, people like, why would they say it? I just said it about me. And to me, I thought that was great, right? But now I've learned through all my healing and my journey that I was just really being horrible to myself and not being my best friend, right? I was just being awful. And I believed all the things that I was saying, right? So I was fat, I was ugly, I wasn't smart, I was like all the things that I could say, in my fun way, I believed. But so I was this executive that people did see my heart and they did see me as authentic. I definitely was authentic. I shared things. I openly cried when things deserved open emotion at work. I did not hide behind that. But by the same token, I couldn't show that I had any concerns about myself. And I couldn't show that I had any, emotions that maybe couldn't be regulated or that maybe I needed some help with, like that. I was expected to be the strong female executive, and I was. And I used to have friends that actually would call it the dichotomy of Suzy. They would see this strong woman up on a stage or, leading something. And, I was strength, I was compassion, I was humor, I was all the things that you wanted a speaker to be. And then they would see me on the weekend. And I either lived by work hard, play harder. So, there was a lot of partying going on. Or I isolated myself. I'm like, you wouldn't. It was one or the other. You kind of got Suzy or you didn't get Suzy, because I didn't even know how to regulate myself at times. I didn't know how to just be me. I was always putting on a mask because just being me scared me. I didn't like the thoughts I had. I didn't like the fears I had. And so I just had to act like I wasn't me. So I wasn't me for a long time.
Yeah. Tell me, what does clinical depression feel like?
Boy, I think everybody feels things differently.
Right? Yeah, for you, then what was that like for you?
For me, it was I couldn't get out of my own way. I could never see a positive through anything. It was always my fault, my issue. So like I took a lot of responsibility, but I probably took everybody else's responsibility, not just mine. I never thought I was worthy. I never felt whole. Always felt like something was missing. Always questioned whether or not somebody was my friend, my lover, my partner, or whatever, because they loved me or because of something else. Even I can go back to being a young girl, and my brothers are a lot older than I am, and one of them is 5 years older than me. And so the other one was 8. So a lot of my friends really didn't know him that well. It's kind of a different generation. But the one 5 years older, people knew him. He's a very handsome guy. I used to think girls wanted to be friends with him just to get close to him. None of that. There's no reason to believe that.
Yeah.
None. But I thought, because I thought, why would they be friends with me? Right. Yeah. And that carried through my life of always assuming like one little thing's going to happen and this friend is no longer going to be my friend, even though I have lifelong friends.
Yeah. Lifelong friends. They're probably not still trying to get with your brother.
I don't think so. And I think my sister-in-law would have something to say about it now. But I really never believed I was good enough. Yeah. So that feeling was always in me, never being worthy. And for me, it was very often I would not want to feel. So I would eat my way to not feeling. I would party my way to not feeling. Those were probably the two things. I would numb myself with food and shop. Because once I started making a lot of money, then shopping became an addiction because that became easy to just go do. And it gave me a moment of gratification. It always felt heavy in my body. And it always felt like I was one sentence away from a tear. But I would hold it back often. But I was one thing away from crying.
Oh, one sentence away from a tear. So that always that like you said, physically in your body, like probably an anticipation of like this
always.
sadness. And I think what's interesting is like, sometimes I think when people maybe think of clinical depression, they think of somebody who hasn't showered in weeks, can't get
Yeah,
out of their bed, which can be that
which
as
can be.
well. But what I'm hearing for you is that on paper, if I was your coworker, I would have no idea this inner battle you were in with yourself.
Absolutely. In
Right. This
fact,
like,
to the point, Holly, I was giving a meditation class last summer, and two of the people that were in it, I worked with,
mm,
and one very closely, and one worked for me actually for a time. So both of them fairly closely. We were talking, and I was talking about the fact that for most of my years of working, I didn't really believe I was very good. And I was
mhm.
always like, somebody's going to figure out I'm not good at this. Somebody's going to figure out I don't know what I'm doing. And they were both like, what are you talking about? But that's what was always going on in here.
Yeah.
I was one
Mm,
mistake away from people figuring out I couldn't do. It
mhm.
was always like that. And yeah, I felt that forever, and
Yeah.
just thought that was my, go get them always, like that, that adrenaline rush was going to come in
Yeah.
and save the day. So don't worry about it, Suze. But yeah, that was my
Yeah.
head,
Yeah.
and my emotions.
Yeah. So just a constant battle with
Always.
yourself, right? Like, and you said like you can get out of your own way. And I thank you for sharing that because I think it's important for people to hear because they may not think that what they're dealing with is a depression, right? It's just like, oh, it's imposter syndrome, or it's like, I'm just hard on myself. And then that thought of like, oh, this is excessive.
Yeah.
This is extreme. This is not like not normal, day-to-day thoughts,
It,
right?
it isn't, and it's interesting, right? Because I thought that I said things
Yeah.
like I used to use the words "I'm a perfectionist" all the time.
Yeah.
Right? I'm a
Yeah.
perfectionist. That's why it takes longer. That's why, because it's just not right. Yeah, I
Yeah.
wasn't a perfectionist. I was a procrastinator, probably more than anything.
Right.
And I had trouble getting out of my own way for a lot of
Mhm.
things, and I could make
Mhm.
excuses. Really simple excuses.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah.
Um, but then you get a turning point. You hit a wall.
Mhm.
And I hit a wall towards the end of 2009 where I made a comment to somebody that, that God punished me for something for many, many years. And she
Mhm.
just looked at me, and I was never raised in faith at all. And she looked at me and she said, well, not my God. I said, what
Mm.
do you mean, not your God? And she said, my God's a loving, forgiving God. My God wouldn't punish you.
Mm.
And that was like my turning point of realizing, oh, I've been doing
Mm.
I've been saying that God punished, but I'm punishing me.
Yeah.
And that was like a big moment for me to realize that I needed different help.
Yeah.
Um, and that coincided with my suicide attempt. So,
Yeah.
and I say I call it an attempt. It was certainly there. I,
Mm.
drove down a windy country road
Mm.
in, the middle of nowhere, New Jersey. Because there are places in New Jersey that are middle of nowhere. I know people don't think there are roads that are windy and nobody's on them. And I had my brand new Jaguar that could go 0 to 60 miles an hour in 5.6 seconds. And I was doing 80 and looking at the tree and thinking to myself,
Ooh.
this is it. I can hit this tree and just end all this, end the pain, end it all. And
Mm.
at that moment, in my mind's eye, all I could see was my mom.
Mm.
And I had lost my brother in 2003. And my brother screamed out, or my mother screamed out to me, I can't lose another child. And that's all I saw and heard. And at that moment, I hit the brakes,
Mm.
spun out, missed the tree, gravel
Ooh.
everywhere, all that kind of stuff. And that was my moment. That was my moment.
Mm.
Between that friend conversation and that moment, I just knew, okay, you need help.
Ooh.
Because
Suzy.
I was about to do that to my mom and have her bury a second child.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh. Yeah. So that was kind of
Oh,
your pivotal moment. So what was, first of all, thank you for sharing that.
yeah.
I'm so glad that your sweet mother was there to remind you how special you are.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
beautiful.
Thank you. Thank
So tell me, what was that like then? I'm sure it was, scary. The car stopped spinning around. You're just like, fuck.
you. Yeah.
Now what,
So
right? Like,
I always
what
remind
happened?
myself of the house spinning in the tornado in Wizard of Oz,
Yeah.
right? And then when it lands and everything's quiet and you just hear her go, oh, And that's how I felt. Like at that moment, I was like, oh,
Ooh.
all right, I'm alive.
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't hit the tree.
Mm.
And I had a cell phone. I picked up the cell phone. I called my then husband, who our marriage was blowing up as this was happening, and told him, and then said, I'm going to go home. And I got home, and he came home 10 minutes later. Like he left where he was and came home, which shocked me.
Mm-hmm.
And he just looked at me and said, you need help. And I was like, yeah, I do.
Mm-hmm.
And the next day I made some calls. And one of the things that I found really interesting is that I went to therapy twice in my life. The first time was when my first marriage blew up. And yeah, it was like group therapy. And the best part about group therapy is there's always somebody that has it worse than you in the group. I mean, I have to just say it that way. And so I kind of was like, all right, I feel a little bit better.
Not that bad.
Exactly. My situation wasn't that bad. I'm not bad. And I moved on. And I thought that was therapy, right?
Yeah.
Then I in the mid 90s or late 90s, I did another therapist because this sadness was there. Let me deal with it. And I thought I did great in that one. And I thought I dealt with a lot of things, which I did. I dealt with a lot of things, but I never told that therapist everything. And I never told her the truth.
Mm.
And that was the key, was never really filling any therapist in on the truth. And she wasn't able to get it from me. The last therapist, I was ready. And she was who I needed. And we started talking, and I found within 2 or 3 sessions, I was sharing everything with her. And it felt so good to get all of these feelings out and to realize that I was not unworthy. I was not broken. I was not, I had wounds I needed to heal. I had things I needed to heal. But I could finally start to cobble my life back together, and together in a better way. And what was interesting was, she wanted to put me on medication right away. So she got me in touch with a psychiatrist. They put me on the medication. That lasted 1 month. And I did what you're not supposed to do. And I took myself off. And I just, like cold turkey, I was like, I'm done with this. And I didn't like how my body felt in it. And I kept thinking, this isn't for me. This isn't what I don't want to mask. I need to feel, because I didn't feel for a long time. And that's what I recognized, right? I had just masked it. I had eaten my way through it, drank my way through it, partied my way through it, worked my way through. I worked as hard as anything. I would work, 80 hours a week. I didn't even think about it. Anything to not feel. So so the drugs weren't going to help me. And that was for me. I think for some people, they're absolute necessity.
Absolutely. Right.
And what I would say to people, Holly, is keep trying until you find what works for you. I took 3 different therapists for me to get to the right one. It took a spiritual coach, a spiritual advisor in like 2012 to really help me start to create this faith in the universe and become a student of A Course in Miracles, and to become a student of law of attraction, and to start meditating, and to all of a sudden realize, like, wow, that's an amazing tool. And I never used that tool before. I tried it. But then I thought I couldn't get my mind to stop, and then figured out that's not what you're doing. And so once I got comfortable in meditating, that became a tool for me. And so it's finding all of the tools. Writing became a tool for me. And it was the spiritual coach that said, well, then start writing, and write weekly, create a blog. That's how she told it. It's like, create a blog, start to do that. And because I wanted people to not feel alone, because I felt alone for so long. I wanted people to not feel alone. So I started a blog, and that blog still goes on. And in fact, the first 2 years of the blog was made into a book. And you want to talk about how did that feel? That felt like, when that book got published, I felt like I was standing in the 50-yard line of, I'll call it Giants Stadium, where my New York Giants play. And and I was in front of 100,000 people naked. That's what it felt like. Greatest feeling in the world in the long run, because again, I wrote for people to not be alone. And they weren't going to be alone.
But you were naked. Middle of Giants.
I was naked, but you know what? Learn. But learn from what I've done. Like, people take nuggets from whatever I write. That's all I look for. And it could be, I don't agree with that, but it made me to think about something else.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love that. Well, and I love that you said, this, you're an expert on Suzy's life, right? You're not here to say follow this and this is how you heal. And I think it's so important, like you said, to continue to try to work on things, right? Because if you would have quit after that first or even second therapist, like therapy doesn't work, it's a bunch of BS, like it never would have opened you up, right? And writing, it was great for you, and meditation, but other people, it could be yoga or whatever it is.
Right.
Like, don't stop until you find it, because
Right.
I'm curious too, because you found that right therapist, but I would be curious if Suzy at her first therapist worked with that therapist, would that have clicked? Or you guys were both just like at the right place at the right time, right?
And I think that's a big piece of it. And I think
Yeah.
that's why, like, even when I worked, and I worked for a very large corporation, we had employee assistants. If you didn't like that first person and you tried somebody else, you didn't just stick with the first person that you got through the employee assistance program. And I think it's the same thing.
Yeah.
If you don't click right away, give it another shot and then go elsewhere. But you have to be ready. I've always said this, there was always that adage of leopards don't change their spots. And I no longer believe that. I believe we can all change those spots. You have to want to, and then you have to choose to. And those are the two things you need to do, right? And so I probably didn't want to up front. I probably didn't think there was like a lot of spots to change. I probably, I'm just sad because my marriage ended, I'll be fine. And I was fine, to a degree. And I healed a lot of stuff, but I didn't heal everything. And I didn't continue to work. Now I work at it all the time. Now, when I say to people all the time, thank God I have all the tools that I have today, because my mom's gone. That mom, saying I can't have another child's not going to pop up. Right? It's not going to happen. So I have to be able to care for myself and know, all right, that I'm not feeling myself and the tools that I use aren't working. I have to do something else. And that means getting to a therapist or getting to a coach or getting to somebody that I know will help me. But that's really key, is to not stop that. To always know, to feel and say like, oh, something's not feeling right. I'm not feeling myself. And what could it be? And not just glaze over it, because I glazed over it for years.
Yeah. And you probably believe that too, right? Like maybe not deep down, but you're like, hey, it's not just a marriage, right? Like, yeah, that'll get better and it'll be better, or I'll get work figured out and that'll be better. And just we excuse our pain away, right?
Oh boy, I bypassed everything.
Yeah.
I easily could explain my pain and move on. And it was very,
and we make it easy to do.
We do. And it's easy because people don't want to talk about it. So that's the other reason. The other thing that makes it easy is people don't want to have conversations.
Yeah.
I mean, to the point, I adore my brother, but he doesn't like me talking about certain things publicly. That's just not, because that's not what he would do. Okay. But I'm not.
Yeah.
And so, I get to do what I want to do. And this feels good for me. I like to be of service. So if I can be of service, I'll share. And my sharing helps me.
Yeah. Yeah. It helps you every time, right? Well, and, talking about this healing, right? I think, we both are fans of Tracy Litt. And, I love that she says, like, we're never healed, we're healing. And I think that's so powerful. And I know in my own life, like when you start to heal in development, you start to work on wounds, you're like, oh, this doesn't feel good, right? Like the immediate healing can sometimes be worse than the original pain.
It's messy.
So talk about, and that I feel like it kind of, you go up, and you're like, okay, now you're a little on top of it, right? But it takes a little bit. So tell me what that original, when you have this incident and, your mom saved your life, right? And now you get to save your life, right? Like you get to now make that move. What was that initial healing like for you? What was that like for you?
So, I can go back to the early 90s, mid 90s, and, what I thought I was healing then. And for me, it brings up a whole load of stuff, right? And so I did a lot of stops and starts because I don't want to know. I don't want to feel that. I don't want to go look back at that again. I don't want to, and so I would stop myself a lot from the journey of healing, which is diving deep into things that Some are deep and things that really hurt you, whether it's the way
Mm-hmm.
other people have treated you, the way you've allowed it to happen, or decisions you've made that, you question, or you question if the things that happened after had to do with that decision. Like there's all these. And so when you
Mm-hmm.
start to heal, all that stuff comes back up. And what you thought you settled, it's like all of a sudden, like in front of you again, right? And so,
Yeah. You're like, but I solved that 5 years ago. I don't need to do it again. I thought that was done. Check
I
off
thought,
your
and
box.
that's what happened in 2009. I'm like, wait a minute, I dealt with this stuff. And then I realized, well, maybe I didn't deal with all of it. And what I had figured out is that healing is like a scab, right? So there's a scab, it pulls off. There's a little bit more blood, but there's never as much blood as the first time, right? And the scab then comes, it gets healed again. And then it gets harder and harder to rip that scab off.
Yeah.
But you might, something big could happen that it pulls it. But again, there's even less blood, right?
Yeah.
But you also get to now look and go, oh, maybe I didn't fix that scab quite as well as I could have. Maybe there was another piece in there. There was something, another piece of, shrapnel, I don't want to use that word, wood, in that. Like there's, because you find a deeper meaning, a deeper truth, a different side of something. That's what I have found with all of my healing has been, I think stuff is healed and then it comes back around and there's something else. And so I always view it as a spiral, right? So the spiral gets like smaller at the bottom, right? So that it's easier to bounce back. I find I'm more resilient, and I don't use that word often, but I bounce back a lot faster. I recognize it faster, but boy, in the beginning, I wanted to stop. Like, I don't want to feel all this. There's a reason why I ate my way to, 200 and something pounds, right? I didn't want to feel all this. There's a reason why I partied. There's a reason why I worked. There's a reason why I did things, but I don't want to feel it all. So healing is very messy. You gotta stick with it, as you know, because once you get through it, like I said, then the next time that scab comes off, you're like, oh yeah, that's that old thing. Yeah, it figures it will come back because this activated it. Okay.
Right.
Right. You start to get smarter and smarter in what's going on with you. In the beginning, I didn't want to do it.
Yeah, because you're like, okay, on a scale of 1 to 10 right now, I'm at like a 4, right?
Exactly.
But you're like, this feels like a 3.
Yeah.
Feeling right. Like now I'm worse. Can I do like, it's not that bad that I weigh 200 something pounds. Like I can afford my shoe habit. Like I don't drink that much, right? Like my life's not that bad compared to Sally at group, who's like, life is a shit show. And then we just like excuse it away.
Absolutely. I looked at things and said, how bad can I be? Right? Like I'm successful. I own my house. I have a, pool. I like all this, but no, that's real. Like that's not the reality, right?
Yeah.
The reality is what goes on in here. And that wasn't feeling real good.
Well, talk about too, this piece, this is something I've kind of been struggling with. So I'm like, I thought I dealt with this in therapy like 7 years ago, like with my dad's stuff. And it like comes back up and I'm better now because I've done the work and I do the work, right? Of like, it's okay. You're in a different place now. You have new awareness, like trying to be very kind and show myself grace. Right. So for you, when you were in a place of, a clinical depression, you've been in it for, you had said 20 plus years, right? As you were going through that growth, which I would assume is kind of that first time of that growth and that nurturing, how were you able to show yourself grace? This is a very long question. I apologize. In my head, it was shorter.
That's okay. That's all good.
How do you show yourself? How did you remember to like show yourself grace when you were like, I thought I dealt with that, and then it comes back 6 months later? Like, how did you continue to be kind to yourself during that?
I probably wasn't always kind to myself.
Yeah.
And I took kindness to myself to be taking a day off and sitting on the beach, which is, don't get me wrong, or I'll take a bubble bath and I'll feel better. And those things worked. But what I really had to show grace for, and this was harder, was it's okay to feel this way. It's okay that today you just really want to cry and you're just going to hang out at home by yourself and maybe even in bed for a few hours and just cry. It's okay because you don't do it every day. I don't allow every day. Right. So I showed myself grace by allowing myself to feel. I showed myself grace by allowing myself to share. And when I didn't want to share, I got a lot better at it's not from a place of shame. It started to come more from a place of does this help anybody else, or am I just sharing for some other reason? And I always have to, like, am I sharing for another reason? If it's because I want empathy, then just ask for empathy and sympathy, and go to somebody
Mm-hmm.
that you know is going to give that to you. You don't need to share to get that. So
Mm-hmm.
I
Good.
definitely talk to myself differently. And
Mm-hmm.
that was so one of the biggest things I had to do through my spiritual awakening, along with all my healing, because they kind of came together,
Mm-hmm.
was learn how to talk to myself differently. So I walked into, one of my very good friends had just gotten married, and she had moved into his house, and I hadn't been there yet. And I went over, and she had, teenage girls, and so did he. And three of them shared a bathroom. And I walked into their bathroom, and all over the mirror were Post-it notes. You are awesome. You are strong. You're beautiful. They were just everywhere. You've got this. And I just looked at our daughter and I said, who did this? She said, oh, we did. I said, why? She said, because we needed to give each other, like, a little boost. So this way we remind ourselves.
I love
I
that.
went home that day. This is from like 14 or 15-year-old girls. I went home that day and I wrote out a bunch of Post-it notes and put them on my mirror. And for years they stayed there. Or like I would replace them because they would
Yeah.
get
I
gross,
love
but
it.
Post-it notes would stay there. And every morning I would read them. Now I've got a couple. I'm looking off to the right. I have something
Yeah.
over here that has things like I am enough.
Mm-hmm.
Life is great just as it is. The feelings that I use to guide my life, joy, gratitude, flow. I attract abundance and positivity. Like that, I have those right here to remind
Oh,
me.
I love
So
it. Here's my little thing. I've got like
That's
a whole thing.
terrific.
And I
That
love
is
it.
terrific.
I rotate these through my big mirror I have. And what I love it. Like the first one, the one I have today is I forgive you. So how
Ah,
timely for this conversation, right?
yeah,
You're
because
like,
giving ourselves
yeah.
is so, that's giving grace. That's, I forgive you and I love you. Like
I
I
mean,
just,
I think that's what you said to me. I'm not like, that's what you talked to me about when my dad passed, right? It's like I
yeah,
think that's what you said. It's like, you have to forgive yourself.
yeah, it's
And
huge.
that still stands out. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm,
well, I'm
yeah.
glad that said something
Yeah. I
so.
still remember that. Well, and I think, as we're talking, I was like, I think the biggest thing I've done in my journey is for self-care is probably the way I talk to myself. And I love that you shared that, because I don't think we don't realize all the negative stuff we talk to ourselves. Like, it's so funny. So
Totally.
yesterday I was just kind of in a mood, and I had a tennis match, and I walked in and this girl looks like super good, and I'm tired and it's late, and I'm just like in my head, and I'm like, remember who you are. What are you doing? Like, but I found myself being like, she's going to beat you. She's going to be better. She's younger. She looks more fit. And then I end up winning my match. But it was so funny because I was like, I know, right? I was like, yeah.
Yeah.
But it was so funny because in my head, I'm like, I had that thought of like, what are you doing? Like, you
Right.
can't be against yourself,
Right. Right.
right?
But we
Like,
are. We are
we
all so
all the
often.
time.
And women are, I find women are especially hard on themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And when I think back, now, we just said my mother, beautiful, sweet mom, like saved
Yeah.
me, right, in my mind's eye. And she
Yeah.
was an amazing woman,
Yeah.
amazing woman.
Mm-hmm.
The things she said about herself, that's what I
Mm-hmm.
heard. That's what I learned. So
Mm-hmm.
I know as I heal, I'm healing her, even though she's gone.
Mm-hmm.
Like I know I'm healing her, and I feel it at times.
Mm-hmm.
But I heard her tell herself that she wasn't smart. She would always tell me that my aunt was smarter than her. I'd be like, "What are you talking about?" Well,
Mm-hmm.
she skipped 2 grades. Okay, but she's not smarter than you.
Yeah.
Like she might be better at math, but you're better at everything else. Like I don't know, like these would be the conversations I would have. Or she
Right.
talk about how she wasn't beautiful. I'm like, have you looked at
Aw.
yourself?
Yeah.
But those are all, I learned all of that,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
and my mother one day said that to me. She said, I'm sorry that you learned all that from me. And I was
Mm,
like, you have nothing to be sorry for.
yeah. Yeah.
Like this is my journey, and what I
Mm-hmm.
heal, hopefully it heals you, but you have nothing to be sorry
Mm,
for. But that's where you learn it, and you internalize everything you
yeah.
learn, and you internalize
Yeah.
everything you see. I mean, my
Mm-hmm.
mom belonged to Overeaters Anonymous. I saw this, that, I mean, because she used food as her pacifier, same way I
Mm-hmm.
did. That was a
Yeah.
learned behavior for me. When I started writing the blog, the first two um, uh, things that I wrote, I printed out and brought to my mom's house, and I had her read them.
Mm,
And afterwards, she looked at me. She says, "I could have written them." I know.
mm,
And that was our realization that we battled the same things.
Mm.
And like, that was a big moment for us, for her for both of us to recognize that. And then she didn't have email. I mean, she sort of did, but she really didn't know how to use it. So I would bring her copies of, and then of course I gave her
Mm.
the book when it was published, and she was thrilled for that.
Mm.
But that, that was really telling, to figure out that we had the same stuff, and it was all self-talk. I mean,
Oh,
I teach
yeah.
people a lot about, I teach meditation, and one of the things I teach
Mm-hmm.
about is we have like 60 to 80,000 thoughts per day, and 80% of them are negative, and 95% of them are repetitive. So it's constant
Yeah.
negative.
Yeah.
And so much of that is about us.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And how special was it for you to share with your mom your healing before she passed? Like how special was that?
That was amazing. And
Mm-hmm.
what I was able to, I shared everything with her before. So
Mm.
when I got to the depths of what had probably kept me in this 25-year depression, because I didn't heal the wound, I shared it with her, which I never had before. And my mom and I talked about a lot of things, and this was the thing that I never told her. And so when I finally did, I wasn't sure how she was going to react. And so I chose, my mother was Jewish. I chose the morning of Yom Kippur because it's all about atonement and forgiveness. And we were getting ready to go to temple. And so I came to her house and sat there and shared it with her. And
Yeah.
she just kind of looked at me and said, "I'm sorry you didn't think you could tell me."
Mm.
And, it was a moment that we both needed. And we went to temple. And then of course the rabbi does this amazing sermon, and in it talks about those of us not having faith in God, and what that could look. And my mother looked at me and said, "Yeah, that's why you're here." And I was like, "I got it." Tears streaming down her face.
Yeah.
Rabbi, but it was so telling, that because I just got done telling her about my lack of faith and that I punished myself, and she just was so giving and loving at that moment, and not at all judgmental, which was what my fear was.
Yeah.
That, from that moment on, we talked a lot, and she understood my healing, and she understood my journey, and she understood what I was trying to do. And she died before I was able to share with her, that I decided to retire and do something different, get out of the corporate rat race, and realize that I'm a happier, healthier human today because of that. But she sees it. She's around me.
Oh, she knows.
Oh,
Well, and for you to have the courage to heal your wounds, which were her wounds, like this whole full circle of you guys saving each other is just like so powerful.
Yeah.
Like it's beautiful.
Thank you. And I think what's neat is my dad was alive for 3 more years, and he saw it, a lot of it firsthand, because now he lived with me part-time. And so he would say things to me like, "Wow, like some of the stuff you say is stuff I would hear your mom say." I'm like, "Yeah, I know. I'm trying to heal that, Dad." I'm working on that.
Yeah, give me some time. There's only so much I can do.
And he never realized that we both had the same stuff. So that was kind of big for him too.
Being cognizant of time and everything. I'm curious, where is your faith now? Because you talked about not having faith, and that was kind of a pivotal point. Like, where are you on this faith journey right now?
So I definitely have faith that the universe has my back, that I don't call it God. I do for people that believe in God, and I have no issue with that. I don't know if there's to me, there's just something much bigger. And I am a believer that we have a soul, and that we are spiritual beings in a human body. And so I do have faith in that there's something bigger and better and greater than me, and that there's a lot more at work than just what I do. And so that, to me, I don't have a faith in a religion. I was raised by a Jewish mother, an Italian Catholic father, and I have to throw in the Italian part because that was more him than even being Catholic. He was excommunicated. He married my mother in 1949. The Catholic Church didn't allow it. So he wasn't a religious man at all. My mom really wasn't that religious. So we weren't raised in a religious home. And so I never understood faith. So now I understand faith as something bigger, and that I know that there's other things at work. And I do at times just say, I'm letting it go,
Mm,
just guide me. And that to me is very, I feel very aligned to that.
yeah. Oh, I love that. And, not to, we cannot boil this conversation down to one thing. And, mental health and clinical depression and the work, all of that is such a, it's a overgrown, it will always be changing. But, maybe for you, what is something you really want to share that if somebody's watching that really resonates with this, like everything looks great on paper, but I am like beating myself up inside. What's maybe one or two things you would want to share with them?
So the first is you're not broken. You don't need to
Mm-hmm.
be fixed, right? Um, get whatever help or support you need from where it'll work. So try
Mm-hmm.
everything. Try everything from salt rooms to massages, because those are modalities of healing. Reiki is
Mm-hmm.
a healing modality. A coach, a therapist,
Mm-hmm.
somebody to talk to get yourself to start understanding how you can change all of that
Mm-hmm.
that's going on in there. Don't give
Yeah.
up.
Mm,
Don't give up.
yeah.
You're
Mm,
so worthy. Don't give up.
that's beautiful. And as we wrap up, I'll two things, and then I know we're right on time. What is maybe something that you're currently questioning in your life, or something you questioned in your life that really made a big difference for you?
Oh, well, my belief or non-belief of something bigger than me was
Mm-hmm.
probably a question I
Yeah.
had for a long time, not believing it because I thought it was something that was punishing me,
Mm-hmm.
and recognizing that I did all that and that there is something greater. And so that was a big question. That was a pivotal
Yeah.
point for me, was to really recognize that there was something greater. What am I still questioning? ah, wow. I mean, we could sit here for hours.
Right.
But I think the biggest thing I still question is the ability to manifest what you want in life.
Mm,
I believe in the law of attraction, but I think it's so nuanced that I sometimes struggle when I don't get what I want and I get more of what I didn't want. What did I do wrong? So that's still a work in progress for me, is really
yeah.
trying to understand, the law of attraction and how to
Mm-hmm.
really manifest what you want, because I think my
Mm-hmm.
mind still tilts towards what I don't want.
Yeah. No, that's beautiful. Yeah. You're like, I didn't want that. Was I not clear? Did I send
Yeah,
out the wrong
I thought I
message?
was clear, but sometimes, and I
Yeah.
look out my window when I say things like that. Just like I find I look at my hand a lot, like, Suzy, what are you doing? My little
Yeah,
mirror.
that's funny.
But yeah, I
Yeah.
like, that's probably something I'm still questioning, like
Amazing.
how to do in a more effective way, because I don't
I
think
love
it's
that.
always
Yeah. Yeah.
working for
And
me.
then last thing is, people, I know that you work on meditation. I believe you do some coaching. If people want to learn more about you, your blog, your book, tell us a little bit more. I can put this in the notes, but tell
Yeah.
us a little bit more about what you're doing right now.
Thank you. So I'm a life and career coach. I
Okay.
do have a website, suzydominic.com. So it's very simple. I also have my blog, which is The Morning Butterfly, all one word, which that has a meaning for me. So butterflies to me are, and they always have been since I was a little kid, not only gorgeous, but they always represented transformation for me, even
Mm-hmm.
as a young. If you ask any friends from junior high or high school, they'll tell you she was the butterfly person.
Mm-hmm.
Everything about butterflies. And to this day there's a tattoo of one on my shoulder. So the I butterfly had to be part of it, but the morning is my favorite time of day,
Mm-hmm.
because I wake up every morning trying to be better than I was yesterday, and some days that's a slam dunk because I wasn't a really good version of me, and other days it's really, really hard to be better. And so it felt like that was right for my blog, was like every
Mm-hmm.
day we're trying to do something, we're trying to be better than we were,
Mm-hmm.
and be part of this transformation and change. And so, so
Mm-hmm.
those are two ways to get hold of me.
Awesome.
And that's,
Mm-hmm.
I teach meditation. I'm a Reiki practitioner,
Very
and
good.
I'm a coach.
Mm-hmm. Suzy, it was so wonderful we've had several conversations, and every time I'm just more drawn to you and your story. And so thank you
Oh,
for
and same with
sharing. And
you.
I
Same with you.
know people will be touched by what you shared. So
Thank
thank you so
you.
much.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Appreciate it.
So, all right. Have a great day.
Thank you.